how our OKRs are evolving. This is a kind of a fun part of the presentation today. I think, especially those of you who are listening to, who've got some experience with OKRs. Um, for lack of a better word, there's been some dogma that's crept into the OKR world. There's some things that people say you definitely do and you definitely don't. And I'm seeing that being challenged, which I think is a good thing. I love the fact that OKRs are dynamic, and we're learning from users all the time. We're doing more research all the time. So I wanted to talk about two things today in particular that I see evolving, and obviously would love feedback from everybody who's listening, and anybody who views the recorded portion of this webinar can contact me to talk about it. But the two are OKRs and performance reviews, and OKRs and incentive compensation. So I'll start with OKRs and performance reviews. Again, this is one of the things that, if you read the books and the literature out there, everyone says don't link OKRs to performance reviews. So let's back up a little bit with some background. I would say that virtually all the research that I'm reading now is suggesting that the old way of conducting performance reviews is outdated, and I would say mercifully it's on the way out, right? And in that model, a manager and employee, they would sit down once a year, they would discuss the employee's performance during the past 12 months. And that's the key there, the past 12 months. So you're really looking in a rear view mirror. And there's so many problems with that model. Again, focusing on the past instead of the present, and maybe more importantly, the future. There's also, we hear a lot about the stack ranking issue of employees, so that even those who work really hard, they're producing results, they're going to be given relatively poor performance reviews, just because that the organization has to do that, and that of course generates a fight or flight response in people. If you're not getting that good review that you hope for, you're obviously it's very alarming to people. So a lot of problems with the traditional system, but fortunately it's changing. There's definitely a new model. We see a lot of large organizations completely abandoning the old performance review process. And as a lot of you know, and Kyle, I know you know this, the focus now is on more frequent feedback between managers and employees. Quarterly, or in some cases even monthly, or maybe more frequently than that, conversations. And no numerical rankings, just discussions that focus mostly on the future. So we're capitalizing on the employee's strengths to guide enhanced performance. And to do this well, though, of course, organizations have to provide some training to their managers on how to structure a conversation like this, the questions to ask, etc. And we think OKRs can play a role in that process. So we're not suggesting that you link OKRs directly to performance reviews. There's more work has to be done on that. But again, we think they can play a part in the process. So just for example, imagine every month, Kyle, if I reported to you, sitting down with you, and you could just ask me, hey, Paul, tell me about an OKR that you worked on this quarter that you were really excited about. You were proud of the results. And that does a couple of things. It increases my engagement because we're having a strategic discussion where I can learn more about the strategy and tell you, about my role in executing it. It gives you a chance to give me any feedback, obviously, on where you think I could have done more, or where I might have veered off course in my understanding of the strategy. So that's really, really critical. Also gives me a chance to discuss my next quarter OKR to ensure that there's alignment that we talked about, alignment that around the priorities and expectations that you would have, that the organization has. And there's a really growing body of evidence. It's really exciting to me that conducting these reviews, having these frequent conversations, has a number of positive attributes. Maybe the most important one is that it's been shown to increase employee engagement. And I'm excited about that because there's also research that shows that companies that are engaging in OKRs, we're seeing small bumps in engagement. And the numbers are small at this point as far as the number of companies that are engaging in this research, but it's exciting. So again, we're not suggesting an out-and-out link between OKRs and performance reviews, but we are saying you can connect them perhaps. So when you're talking to your employees, just discuss how an OKR they worked on was something that helped them, help the organization. Use that to inform the discussion. So Kyle, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, or what you're seeing. Are you seeing anything similar in your world?
Yeah, absolutely. We're often lumped in. Atiim as a company is often lumped in with a lot of these software products that do continuous performance management. And our perspective on it is that OKRs are fantastic context for these conversations, these performance reviews, continuous coaching conversations, 360 reviews, all of that. OKRs are a perfect jumping off point for those conversations. And we also see them as a great way to focus on the results that an employee is creating, and not just the activity that they're doing week to week, or maybe the personal personality traits, character traits, those sorts of things. It's really results based, and that's a great. It helps keep those conversations very objective.
Yeah, really well said. So the second one, Kyle, this might be a little bit more controversial. I'll be very curious to see what questions we get from the audience on this one. OKRs and incentive compensation, right? So, and I've got in italics there, overcoming the sandbagging problem. So if you read the literature here in OKRs, the verdict is very clear on this topic. You do not link OKRs to incentive compensation. And the primary rationale for that is, of course, that sandbagging problem. And it's a classic problem. If I'm going to link your OKRs to compensation, Kyle, you're going to say, well, of course, I'll just set the bar really low, and and of course that's antithetical to the whole idea of OKRs, which are supposed to be about stretching and visionary thinking. When you're doing the opposite, because you want to achieve a reward, right? So that's the thinking there, setting easily achievable targets in order to ensure an incentive reward. But having said that, of course, and I'm well aware of that, but the landscape is shifting. And I'm actually seeing more and more of my clients link OKRs to incentive compensation. And some would say, and I agree with this, that the sandbagging problem, and hear me out on this, is a bit specious. I don't know if it's as solid as we thought it was. And here's why. I mentioned earlier that OKRs are not set in a vacuum. Of course, first you've got to have that strategic context we talked about. But something we haven't discussed yet, but I think is really important, is that OKRs are a negotiation. This is that bottom up that you talked about a minute ago, Kyle. When I develop OKRs, let's say again, Kyle, I report to you. I don't just say, here, Kyle, here are my OKRs, and you rubber stamp them. That's definitely not the way the system works, or not the way it should work. I could certainly draft OKRs. My team can draft OKRs, and if I report to you, we have a discussion. Then we have a negotiation where. And that does so many positive things that we've already talked about. It makes sure that you can allay to us what you think are the concerns that you have about what we've had. You can coach us on the level of stretch. You can tell us when we're off target as far as the strategy is concerned, and that increases engagement. All good things come from this negotiation. But perhaps most importantly is you can challenge us on our targets. You could say, gosh, you want to increase the number of new users this quarter by 500. Why not 1,000? Why didn't you come up with 1,000? And so through this negotiation process, I'm not saying that sandbagging can disappear, but I'm kind of saying that, shame on the manager who would let that go through. If you just rubber stamp your subordinates OKRs without doing any kind of coaching, any kind of negotiation, then that's a problem. But on the other hand, if you do what we're talking about, if you have that really in-depth conversation about the targets, about the strategy, and you come to agreement on a target that you both agree is visionary, it's aspirational, but with really hard work, it's doable, then why not link it to compensation? Why not reward employees for that extraordinary effort? So again, I'm seeing more and more of my clients. I had one, I can't name them, but I had one fairly large client recently that we were having this discussion. They just said, well, it's off the table, not linking it to compensation. We're doing it right out of the gate. And they did. And they're doing exactly what we're talking about, having these conversations that are so important. So I'm not using this webinar as a soapbox to advocate for this. I am saying, however, don't rule it out. Just because you're reading some of the literature out there that says definitely don't do it, just consider it. It might be right for your organization. It might not be. You might not be at a state now where you're culturally ready for it. But just consider it. And don't close the door completely, is I guess what I would say on this one. Kyle, love to hear what you think about this.
Yeah, we also get that question a lot, and I think you're right, Paul. It is one option on the table as a way to kind of kickstart engagement and get employees and managers more engaged, because a lot of times what we do see is that companies want to create bottom-up types of alignment where they're getting their employees contributing to and their managers deciding on like these key results and what are good measurements for it, but they don't quite have that culture built yet, the habit of employees and managers participating. And so I think by tying it to compensation, that is one option as a way to get them to see that they do have a stake in the outcome of the OKR program.
Yeah, nothing is going to make OKRs more real for employees than saying, hey, we're linking it to your compensation. Yeah, that's going to get everyone's attention immediately. Now, we haven't even talked about, and I'm a bit of a psychology geek, Kyle, so we haven't even talked about the intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, and there's a whole lot of research that suggests that incentive compensation, of course, is extrinsic. So we'll leave that on the table for another webinar. But you know, again, get small numbers at this point, because this is just something that's, as I mentioned, is evolving. But I'm seeing clients that are having success with this, because as you just said, it really gets people's attention. It gets that buy-in and support, and it fosters those conversations. So I'm excited about seeing where this goes. And you know, perhaps when we have another webinar in several months, we'll have an update.
It's another question along that line, Paul, is do you recommend this for companies who are brand new to OKRs, or, you know, going back to the learning curve, it seems like they may want to do a few rounds of OKRs before they start linking these compensation in the OKRs?
Really terrific point, Colin. An important one. Thanks so much for bringing that up. Yeah, I would, again, although I have clients who do it right out of the gate, I would suggest exercising a little caution. Again, as I mentioned, having reviewed thousands of OKRs, the increase in just the ability to write a good OKR from quarter to quarter is astounding to me, how people get better at it. So I would be very wary about linking my initial OKRs to compensation, because I just know they're going to get better. People just, you know, just setting targets and key results is not easy. It's definitely more of an art than a science, and you will get better at it. So this is something I would say, yeah, approach with caution, but consider it.